In the heart of a desolate town, nestled between gnarled trees and forgotten whispers, there stood an ancient house, its timbers warped and its windows shrouded in darkness. It was here that a young man named Ethan found himself one cold, moonless night. Ethan was no stranger to sleepless nights, haunted by nightmares that clung to the fringes of his consciousness. He had long forsaken the solace of sleep, but as exhaustion consumed him, he sought refuge in the dilapidated house, its eerie silhouette beckoning him like a siren's call. With heavy eyelids and trembling limbs, Ethan stumbled through the threshold, the creaking of floorboards echoing through the empty halls. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and shadows danced in the flickering candlelight. Ignoring the warning whispers that echoed in his mind, Ethan collapsed upon a dusty couch, his body succumbing to the relentless embrace of sleep. And in the depths of his unconsciousness, he was ensnared by a darkness more sinister than any he had known before. A suffocating silence enveloped him as he lay paralyzed, his limbs rendered useless by an unseen force. Panic clawed at his throat as he struggled to draw breath, but the air hung heavy and stale, choking him with its malevolence. Through half-closed eyes, Ethan saw a figure emerge from the darkness, its form twisted and contorted in ways that defied reason. Its eyes gleamed with a hunger that sent shivers coursing down his spine, and he knew then that he was not alone in this nightmare. With agonizing slowness, the creature drew closer, its movements fluid yet jagged, like a marionette controlled by unseen hands. Its breath was a fetid whisper against Ethan's skin, cold tendrils of dread snaking their way into his very soul. Try as he might, Ethan was powerless to move, his muscles bound by invisible chains that held him captive in this realm of terror. Desperation clawed at his mind as he fought against the paralysis that gripped him, but it was futile, a futile struggle against the inexorable tide of darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the paralysis released its hold, and Ethan found himself gasping for air, drenched in cold sweat and trembling like a leaf in the wind. But the terror lingered, its icy fingers tightening their grip around his heart, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked in the shadows of his mind. With trembling hands, Ethan rose from the couch, his eyes darting nervously around the dimly lit room. But the creature was nowhere to be seen, its presence fading like a nightmare upon waking, leaving behind only the lingering sense of unease. As he stumbled towards the door, Ethan felt a sudden urge to flee, to escape the suffocating embrace of the house and the darkness that dwelled within its walls. But even as he crossed the threshold and stepped out into the cool night air, he knew that the horror he had faced would follow him wherever he went, a specter haunting the deepest recesses of his mind. For Ethan had glimpsed the true nature of fear, and once seen, it could never be unseen. And as he disappeared into the night, a solitary figure against the backdrop of shadows, he knew that his battle against the darkness was far from over. For in the depths of sleep, where nightmares reign supreme, there are no saviors, no heroes to vanquish the monsters that lurk in the shadows. There is only the darkness, and the endless cycle of fear that binds us all.
In the quiet suburbs of a small town, nestled among the winding streets and shadowed by towering trees, lived Sarah. Sarah was an ordinary young woman, with hopes, dreams, and a penchant for adventure. However, her life was about to take a terrifying turn. One fateful night, after a particularly grueling day at work, Sarah collapsed onto her bed, longing for the sweet release of sleep. But as her eyelids drooped and her breathing slowed, an ominous feeling crept over her, like a shroud of darkness enveloping her fragile form. In the depths of the night, Sarah's eyes snapped open, her body paralyzed by an unseen force. Panic surged through her veins as she realized she couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even blink. She was trapped in her own body, a prisoner to the horrors of sleep paralysis. As Sarah lay there, helpless and vulnerable, a sense of dread washed over her like a tidal wave. Shadows danced across the walls, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes that seemed to leer at her with malevolent intent. The air grew thick with an oppressive darkness, suffocating her in its icy grip. But it was not just the darkness that tormented Sarah. It was the presence that lurked within it. A sinister entity, unseen yet palpable, loomed over her like a specter from the depths of her darkest nightmares. Its presence was suffocating, its gaze piercing her soul with a chilling intensity. With each passing moment, Sarah's terror only intensified. She could feel the weight of the entity pressing down upon her, crushing her beneath its invisible grasp. She tried to scream, to cry out for help, but her voice was lost in the suffocating silence of the night. As the hours dragged on, Sarah's mind began to unravel, consumed by a maelstrom of fear and desperation. She could feel the tendrils of madness creeping into her consciousness, threatening to engulf her in their cold embrace. But still, she fought against the darkness, clinging to the faint hope of escape. Just when Sarah thought she could bear it no longer, a faint glimmer of light pierced the darkness. It was a voice, soft and gentle, calling out to her from the depths of her subconscious. "Sarah, can you hear me?" It whispered, its words like a beacon of hope in the blackness. With a surge of determination, Sarah reached out to the voice, grasping onto it with all her strength. Slowly but surely, she felt the paralysis begin to loosen its grip, releasing her from its suffocating embrace. With one final effort, she broke free from its clutches, gasping for air as she was pulled back into the waking world. As Sarah lay there, trembling and exhausted, she knew that she had faced something truly terrifying that night. But she also knew that she had emerged from the darkness stronger than before, armed with the knowledge that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope.